I'm up here at Nevada County Airport at the line office where I grew up, pumping gas and washing airplanes in exchange for flying time. And every Saturday afternoon or morning, we all gather around the coffee pot for what we call a hangar flying session, or war stories, or if you're a motorcyclist, it's called bench racing. And this is where I learned most of everything I know about aviation, is from hanging out with the elder pilots around here and listening to their stories. When I grew up here in the 70s, the folks that were hanging around here were World War II veterans. In fact, my first instructor pilot, Gabby Garth Reynolds, a World War II P-51 ace. And all that information that he had, he was able to pass on to me. Just a tiny fraction of it stuck, but still, what a great experience. So today we have certified old-timers Bill Davis, Tony Rivera, Harold Wolf, and Stu Carson in the house. Well, let's see what they have to say.
I was flying the airplane and I was over here, and he says, now don't apply rapid aileron movements. You know, on the Navy pilot, when he turns, he's in about a 60-degree bank. And
you remember what now?
I remember when Juan Brown with long hair when he owned a Pete and Paul.
A Pete and Paul air camper.
Right.
The one where the map flew out of it.
Right.
That's right. I learned all about the romance of open cockpit flying in the Pete and Pole, and soon sold that and bought my first Luscombe for $3,500. Stu, how long have you been flying now?
Well, since 44.
1944?
Yeah.
What did you solo in?
PT-19 Fairchild.
Was that military?
Well, it was military. The airplane was bought on surplus.
So but that was civilian. You were doing civilian training at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had a long and distinguished career with the airlines, retiring from
PSA.
From PSA, which was bought up by. It was bought by Delta.
U.S. Air.
Oh, that's right. We're brothers from another mother now.
Yeah.
But when you retired, it was still PSA.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, what all aircraft did you fly in with PSA?
Well, with PSA, I flew the DC-3s and the Electras, the 727s, and 737s, and the Dash 80.
So you came through the jet age, from the recip to the jet age.
You
lived through to tell about it. Okay, time for one quick war story. Tell us about the time you were flying another Lockheed Electra that was owned locally that had a flap malfunction as you were coming into land. What the hell happened there?
Trying to think of the guy who owned it.
Bob Carmen.
Bob Carmen.
Yeah.
And I flew it for Bob. And he liked to fly, but he didn't feel real comfortable in it. And,
right. He didn't have a lot of flying time himself. And this was a Lockheed 12?
This is a Model 12.
Okay.
Yeah. And
anyways, you were coming into land.
Yeah.
Configured.
Gear down, and downwind was normal, and Bob liked to handle the gear and the flaps for me.
Okay.
And
so he was in the right seat.
He was in the right seat. And of course, the gear was down, and I was just turning downwind, and I had a half flap on. And partway through the base leg, I wanted full flap. Well, we went through about 3/4 flap, and one flap gave up.
Just one side.
Yeah. And
it just snapped closed suddenly?
Yeah, went up flat. And fortunately, I didn't have a lot of gas aboard. And the airplane had pretty good power. And they took full control to boot the wing back up again. But I went to full power and got enough speed to get the other flap up. And then we landed normally.
So you figured that out right away. You hollered at Carmen to raise those flaps, huh?
I let it raise poor Bob. He had his hand on the flap gear, and I guess I thought before I yelled, and I caught him on an uppercut and off that switch.
You caught him right in the choppers with your hand?
Yeah. And we went around and we landed. Everything okay. Then we had to get home.
Yeah.
Okay. What better to tape the damn flaps back up again and go zero flap?
Yeah.
Which wasn't a problem.
Yep. Because that was you came back around and did a zero flap landing, uneventful zero flap landing, right?
Well, yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, one was blown up, the other was retracted. So.
Yeah, yeah. Did it stay, that busted flap, did it stay up or did it eventually?
Well, after I was on the ground, yeah.
Fell back down?
One flap gave up and one drooped down, but I knew that flap, both those flaps would stay up. The minute we got going.
Yeah, for the aerodynamic load.
So we taped them up with duct tape. Got them.
Brought 'em home. Lockheed 12. War Stories with Stu Carson. An asymmetric flap situation in an old Lockheed 12 similar to this one, low and slow and close to the ground, is a very precarious situation. And it's Stu's lightning-quick reactions that save the day and make these stories very important to listen to and learn from. You see lots of what?
Watt Brown videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And the other night I saw one where you were down there in McClellan and you were explaining, and it sounded like you were the main guy that designed, built, created this retardant system on this airplane.
You watched the 747 video. Good.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything?
I can't remember right now.
So, Harold, how long you been flying now?
Since 1947.
1947.
47.
What did you learn in originally?
A J3 Cub.
Really? And what do you got today?
An RV-12, light sport, Vans aircraft.
Did you fly pretty consistently all those years?
No.
Yeah.
No. College, wife, kids.
Yeah.
The usual.
And your career was spent as an engineer.
Yes.
Doing what kind of engineering?
Mechanical.
Mechanical engineering.
Yeah. Program management, ran a department, finally chief engineer of a company. Yeah.
And you're still flying today?
Yes.
At what age?
92.
92.
Yeah.
Excellent. Harold Wolf, Nevada County Airport.
Yeah. Is it?
Harold had a very successful career as a mechanical engineer. He built and finished his RV-12 just a few years ago, and before the RV-12 he had a Cessna 152 where he flew to all of the lower 48 contiguous states here in the United States. Tony, how long have you been flying now?
Well, about 67 years.
67 years?
Yeah.
Wow. What did you start out in?
A J3.
Another J3?
Yeah.
And what do you got today?
A J5.
A J5? That's a long career, huh? A long and distinguished career.
Yeah.
And what was your day job?
I was an aeronautical engineer.
Really?
Yeah.
And where'd you work at?
Naval Air Station, Alameda.
Alameda. And what kind of projects? What are some of the bigger projects you worked on?
Well, it was basically assigned overhaul of aircraft engines.
Oh, really?
Started off with the 3350 and wound up with the, well, probably TF-34. And there were all Navy aircraft engines assigned to the station.
Was that depot level maintenance there
Yes.
at Alameda?
Yes.
All right. So you saw all kinds of aircraft coming in
And
with those
engines. Yeah, right.
And you're still flying today?
Yes.
At what age?
I'm 81.
Wow, very good. Tony enjoys living here on the airport on a house and hangar that he built with access to the runway. This is Bill Davis, old-time air tanker pilot, long-time Nevada County resident. How long have you been flying, Bill?
since I was a teenager.
What did you start in?
Right now, but I can
Well,
do it.
when I was about 15 years old, I got a job on this little airport on southeastern New Mexico, chopping weeds, sweeping floor, and eventually I got promoted to refueling airplanes.
Refueling airplanes?
Yeah.
From there, where'd you go to?
Well, I believe when I was 5 or 6 years old, I heard a sound in the sky, and I looked up and I saw an airplane, and that was the moment I was hooked. And when I was about 9 years old, I had made friends with this big guy. This big guy was actually a high school student that had a job, part-time job in a car repair shop. And one day, this barnstormer came to Lovington, New Mexico, and there was no airport. It's just cow pasture. And that part of New Mexico is so flat you can see the curvature of the land. Anyway, this barnstormer landed, and he was flying a Ryan 21.
PT-22.
No, Ryan. I mean, a
Fairchild? No.
Fairchild 21. At the moment, I can't remember Fairchild 21.
PT-19?
Huh?
PT-19?
No. This is a Ryan, 2 open cockpits, parasol wing.
We still work at getting our facts straight here on the Blancolirio channel.
Anyway, in the process of landing this airplane, he ground looped it, and one landing gear was out like this. And I don't know the exact details of how this big guy acquired the airplane, but the pilot got on a Greyhound bus and left town. And this big guy allowed me to believe that I was helping him, and we tied this landing gear up and towed it down the street to the garage. It's behind the garage.
Fairchild 22.
Anyway, and I helped him. He allowed me to take the and so he got out his welding torch and some stuff, and he fixed this airplane. And I believe that about that period of time that I bought this book by mail order on Learn to Fly an Airplane in 10 Easy Lessons, and I think the book cost $1.
Yeah.
That? One of those?
That's it.
Let's see what you find, James.
Tony was right.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Now, when did you end up here at Grass Valley?
1963.
What brought you here?
I heard about a job at County Airways for airplane mechanics.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, the airplanes were bigger than the hangar, and so we worked on airplanes and painted them outside in the rain and the snow.
CalNat Airways was the pioneer air tanker operation here in Northern California before even CDF was even born, basically, right?
Over there at Willows.
Oh, okay, yeah. The crop duster?
The trees, and the restaurant and the trees, and then there's a thing that's got the name of some of the early pilots. Randy Bullock's father was one of those guys.
Okay.
You remember
Randy Bullock, yeah, he ran the FBO here at the airport.
And then he disappeared.
Uh-huh.
And
But Bob Stevenson ran CalNat
correct.
at the time? Mm-hmm. And so what kind of aircraft you guys had?
We had 2 B-17s, 2 PBYs, 5 TBMs, 4 F-7Fs, a B-23, and then some other incidental small toy airplanes, like DGA-15s.
Oh, wow. Neat stuff. And that was...
And over there in the outdoor storage, we had some derelict B-25s without engines on them.
Yep. And that's where the one that Ralph ended up with. Now...
No.
No? Well, that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole nother story.
Anyways, so you got involved from mechanic and you got involved with flying these aircraft.
I got promoted to co-pilot on a B-17.
Right. Firebombing.
Air tanker.
Here's the outdoor working conditions at CalNat Airways, which I got involved with later on when I was old enough. But as a youngster, I was close enough to pedal my bicycle up here and check out all the neat old airplanes. And this sole surviving P-61 Black Widow, maybe it was the F-15 photo recon version, I'm not sure, is the subject for yet another story later.
And that year, 1965, my captain was named Bob Walker, and I was going to be a B-17 co-pilot, and I kept walking around behind him saying, "Captain, when are you going to check me out in the airplane?" He said, "Don't worry about that. We'll do that on the first flight." And anyway, our first dispatch was to Kalispell, Montana.
Really?
And I said, "Captain, how do you want to go?" And he said, "Just like an Indian going to shit."
So straight, direct.
But anyway, so we took off the first time, and he rolls the airplane into a left turn, and he gets up out of the seat and says, "You got it, I got to take a shit."
So that's your checkout in the B-17.
Right.
Now, tell me this story again about the time you had a big old hydraulic leak in a B-17.
Well, the original hydraulic system for a B-17 was about like this. There's electric pump driving a motor with some other monkey motion on there. But when they put the retardant tanks in it, they needed a greater volume of fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And so they put in this big thing, and they put an engine-driven
Hydraulic pump?
hydraulic pump on the inboard engines. And the problem was they didn't put a firewall shutoff valve in there.
Ooh.
And so anyway, one day at Fresno, and you could make a 180-degree turn, and from where you were parked, and you would be on the center line of the center line of the runway. Anyway, we ran out there, and at Fresno, the control wheel and the throttles and all the stuff you put your hands on was about 140 or 150 degrees. But anyway, we turned around, and as we turned around, I had this smell, and I looked down, and the belly was awash with 5606 red hydraulic fluid.
And where were we at in the pattern, or flying around? Where were we at?
Just turning from the parking spot to the center line of the
Oh, you ain't even taken off yet.
And so I was flying with this living legend, Don Ornbaum.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Look." And he says, "Get down there and see what it is." So I got down there, and I stuck my head up, and I says, "The relief valve on the hydraulic panel is leaking." He says, "You have the parts to fix it with?" I said, "Yes." I was always in trouble with the boss because I was able to acquire spare parts.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a relief valve. And so he says, "Okay, we're going." So he applies power, and we take off, and we were going somewhere up by Ukiah or something like that. And we climbed up to about 10,000 feet, and he says, "Okay, fix it."
En route.
En route.
Are you en route to a dispatch, or just en route to move the aircraft, I suppose?
En route to a fire.
Okay.
And anyway, I get down there, and the only problem was we had 3,000 psi of hydraulic pressure, and we had to get rid of that. And the only way we could get rid of it was to shut down the two inboard engines.
Because there's no shut-off valve. So from 10,000 feet, with a full load of retardant.
With a full...
And you're going up the Central Valley at this point?
Somewhere out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got it fixed.
At what altitude did you get it fixed by?
About 2,000 feet.
Holy smokes! So it was a steady downhill run.
Right.
With those two engines off.
But I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was good flying. Bill Davis, Nevada County Airport. Well, as you can tell from Bill's story, a lot has changed in the air tanker industry, as they did not have the most enviable safety record back in the good old days. Well, I hope you enjoyed this session of hangar flying, just a typical Saturday afternoon at the local airport. And I highly suggest if you're new to aviation to get to your local airport and spend some time hanging out and listen to the elder folks. They've got a lot of stories to tell. They live to tell about it, and they're more than willing to pass on the information to you. And before you know it, it'll be your turn to be the resident old-timer passing on the corporate knowledge to the next generation.